Alma closed the door of her parents' home, and she and her friend Barbara stood in the sun for a moment.
"Your mother is so nice, Alma," said Barbara. "She said to me, 'We love to see Alma's friends. She wants me to stay for a week.'"
Alma smiled. "She likes you, Barbara. You're a good friend to me, and my mother knows that," she said. She looked around her at the street. "After 6 years away, this city feels very different to me." Barbara smiled.
"Yes," she said. "After your 6 years in Vienna, you're more Austrian than I am. But everything feels different now. It's true. 6 long years of study, and now we're doctors."
"And next month everything changes for you again," Alma said. "A new life in Salzburg. I'm really happy for you."
"A new life, a new city, a new hospital," said Barbara. "It's a famous hospital too. I'm lucky to get work there."
She turned to her friend.
"But what about you, Alma? What are you going to do? Are you going back to live in Vienna again? Or are you going to look for work here?"
"I don't know," said Alma slowly. "Before I can answer that question, I need to tell you a story, the story of Nina." They started walking to the river, and Alma began her story. "Nina was my little sister. She was beautiful, much more beautiful than me, with her black hair and green eyes. And she was full of life, and clever too. There were always boyfriends at the door, but they changed all the time. Then, when she was 18, she began to study at the university. One day, she came home with a smile on her face. 'What is it, Nina?' I asked. 'You look excited about something. Or is it somebody? Tell me.'
'I met someone today,' she said happily. 'He's called Dragan, and he's studying maths too. And he's wonderful.'
'That's great, Nina,' I said. 'Where in the city does he live?' My sister did not answer this question. She began to talk about a party on Friday night. I looked at her face carefully. I knew my little sister very well. 'Nina,' I said, 'come on, tell me, where does Dragan live?' Again, Nina said nothing. But I knew the answer. It was bad news. Bad news for Nina. Bad news for our parents. Bad news for everyone. 2 weeks later, Nina brought Dragan to our house. Dragan was tall and dark, with bright eyes and a quick smile. He loved Nina, and she loved him. We could all see that. Dragan had dinner with us, and then we had coffee and talked. Then my father spoke. 'Dragan,' he said, 'your people are not our people.' I looked at Nina. She was quiet and watched my father carefully. But she said nothing. Dragan looked worried. "We live on this side of the river, and your people live on the other side," my father said. "We have our places of worship, and you have yours. We are different. We have our ways, and your people have their ways. It was like that when I was a boy, and it is still like that now." Then he smiled. "But we can be friends," he said. "You are a good man, and my daughter loves you. Anybody can see that. Our door is always open to you, Dragan." "Thank you," said Dragan quietly. And Nina smiled at him, at my father, at me, at everybody. After that, they were always together. At the university, at home, in town, it was always Nina and Dragan. They studied together and went to parties together. They were two young people, happy and in love. And then the war began. At first things were difficult, but they could still meet sometimes. But then things began to change. When the university closed, Nina and Dragan could not see each other every day. They talked on the phone, but it was not the same. "I can't live without him," Nina said to us one night, with tears on her face. "I must see him. I must." "Nina, you can't cross the bridge," my father said. "It's dangerous for you over there. There are men with guns everywhere, and they watch the bridge night and day. And Dragan can't come here, not now. We must all wait. Perhaps one day you can see him again." "Wait," said Nina, and the tears came to her eyes again. "For how long?" A week later, Nina left our house very early one morning. Nobody heard her. Dragan left his house too, and they both walked carefully and quietly to the bridge. They just wanted to see each other. Nina left a message for us in her room. "I'm not going onto the bridge," the message said, "but I must see him. I can't wait any longer." We waited all day. Where was she? My mother phoned all our friends, but nobody had any news. Then, that evening, an old friend of the family came to the door. "I have some terrible news," he said. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." At once, my mother began to cry. My father put his arm around her. "Tell us," he said. "It's about my daughter, yes? My little Nina." "It happened this morning," our friend said. "On the bridge, your daughter saw her boyfriend, Dragan, on the other side. She called his name, and he ran onto the bridge. And somebody shot him. When he fell, she ran onto the bridge at once. She took him in her arms, but somebody shot her too. They died on the bridge together. We are trying to bring their bodies back, but it's very difficult. I am very sorry. I went to Nina's room. Next to her bed, there was a photo of her and Dragan. She told me once, "I can't live without him." And it was true. But now they are together, forever. So we waited. Those were terrible days. Nobody said very much, and my mother cried a lot. In my room at night, I cried too. And then, on a beautiful spring day, we went to a hill above the town. It was sunny all day. Nina loved the sun, I remembered. And there we buried them together, my sister Nina and her Dragan. For a few minutes, the two women did not speak. They walked slowly along by the river. The water was bright in the sunlight. Then Barbara said, "And when did you leave and go to Austria?" "A week later," Alma said. "My parents sent me to my mother's sister, Anna, in Vienna. I did not want to leave them, but it was dangerous here, more dangerous every day. They did not want to lose two daughters. Anna was good to me. She understood. She helped me to begin my studies again." "And now you are back in your hometown," said Barbara. "Why now?" "When the war ended," Alma said, "I wanted to come back, but I wasn't ready." "Finish your studies first," my parents said, and they were right. But now, it's the right time. I needed to see my family, and I needed to go to the bridge. Alma stopped and turned to her friend. Her face was white. "And there it is," she said very quietly. "Just along the river, look. You can see it now." Barbara took her friend's arm. "Let's go over there, to that cafe," she said. "You need to sit down." "The Bridge Cafe," said Alma. "I remember it. Nina often waited for Dragan there." "Yes, let's go there. I feel close to Nina there." They crossed the road and sat down at a table outside the cafe. They both had coffee, and Alma began to look better. "Are you okay?" asked Barbara. "Yes, thanks," said Alma. "I just need some time. And some more coffee, perhaps." Barbara felt the warm sun on her face. "This is a difficult day for Alma," she thought. "But the sun's shining, and people are doing the usual things, working, driving around, shopping, talking, having coffee. Perhaps that can help her." Alma and Barbara had another coffee and watched the river. Just then, a big black car stopped near the bridge. A beautiful young woman in a long white dress got out of the car with a young man. She carried a bouquet of white flowers in one hand, and the young man held her other hand. They walked onto the bridge, and when they got to the middle, they stopped. The young woman took 2 flowers from her bouquet. She dropped one flower into the river, and her husband dropped the second flower. Alma and Barbara watched all this.
"What are they doing?"
Alma whispered.
"Find out for me, Barbara. Ask somebody."
Barbara turned to a man at the next table. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm a visitor here. Can you answer a question for me?" "Yes, of course," the man said. "What do you want to know?" "Those 2 young people on the bridge," said Barbara. "What are they doing? Why are they dropping flowers into the water?" "It's their wedding day," said the man. "In the war, 2 young lovers died on the bridge. They were called Nina and Dragan. We don't want to forget them. Now, after a wedding, people come here and drop 2 flowers into the river. One for Nina, one for Dragan. Watch them now. They are saying their names." Barbara was afraid to look at Alma's face. Alma sat so still, so still. On the bridge, the man and woman watched the flowers in the water for a moment. The man put his arm around his young wife. Then they walked slowly back to the car and drove away. "Who did it first?" "I don't know," said the man at the next table. "But now everybody comes here on their wedding day. We all remember the war, of course we do, but we must remember love too. Love is more important than war." "Thank you," said Barbara. "Thank you very much for telling us that story." She looked at Alma's white face. "Come," she said quietly. "Let's walk onto the bridge together." She took Alma's arm and they walked onto the bridge. At the middle of the bridge, Barbara stopped and looked out over the river. "Look," she said to Alma. "The flowers are still there. Do you see? Flowers for Nina and Dragan. That's so beautiful." The 2 white flowers were bright in the sun. "Love is more important than war," Alma whispered. There were tears on her face, and she watched the flowers for a long time. Then she looked at Barbara and slowly smiled. "Barbara, I know the answer to my question," she said. "I can live here again. This is my home." They walked off the bridge. The 2 flowers, together in the water, moved slowly away on the river.